Okay, so on this Interceptor, it did not come with sync. Sync is the Ford's infotainment system for your Bluetooth, like Sync 3 and stuff had like GPS, and maybe Sync 2 did as well. Some of the Interceptors, like the last one I had, came with, I think it was Sync 1, which is like the small screen, but it also had like, Bluetooth, and you could hook in your USB to run like your iPod or iPhone or whatever. This has literally nothing. So I've got a radio and a CD player. That's it. Now you'll notice though that I've got the aux button, but it doesn't actually do anything. And the car's not on right now. But if you hit it, it wouldn't do anything. It's not enabled. So in order to do that, we're going to go into ForScan, enable it. But the thing is there's no actual wires running anywhere to tell it that something is plugged in. So if you, I've had my center console swap done. If you go back and reference my video of doing that, and that's why it says sync right here, because this came from a vehicle with sync, but mine does not. But on the Interceptors, there's usually a panel where this would normally go that just goes straight down. And then there's a little rectangular panel and then two cigarette lighter outlets. Now that little square or rectangular panel, that will sometimes have an auxiliary port. Sometimes I'll have an auxiliary port with a USB. But mine was just a blank one, so literally nothing, no input for me other than CD player. So what we got to do is we got to run some wires, and then on right here is where you'd normally access sync. There's a single USB port in here in the Explorer that this came from on the Sport. Now, I don't even have an auxiliary port. I think some of these did have like a auxiliary port and a USB, or this one just has a USB. Now, this, you can't really hook this up. You can't really install sync in one of these. From the research I've done, if you can, it's going to be very expensive, very difficult. No real point of doing that. So I'm actually going to hook up a Bluetooth system utilizing this USB as purely a power source. It's not going to have any data transfer like the sync one had. It's only going to be hooked up to 12 volt power, which it'll be reduced down to 5 volts, and I'll show you how to do that. And then I'm going to put this auxiliary plug, mount it in here, probably somewhere under there, and then we're going to do some behind the scenes wiring. We got a lot of splicing and adapting to do to make this work, but it's well worth it because you'll essentially have Bluetooth. And the only other way you can really get Bluetooth is if you buy an aftermarket radio, which Metra has a fitting kit, but it relocates the radio down to here, which is just kind of and then there's this little screen that they put up here, that an aftermarket screen that's kind of clunky, not very, doesn't look very good. And that has the temperature controls. In my experience, those aftermarket kits are always pretty crappy. And from the reviews I've seen on that kit, they tend to fail. Plus, it's just weird having the temperature controls up here and the radio down here. And they do that because there's not enough depth up here to get the radio in. And then since this is all one big area, or like one big unit with the temperature controls, they had to integrate. Anyway, it's a mess. And those kits are super expensive. If they were $100, I'd probably buy it. But instead, I think they're like in the like $300 to $500 range. Now there is a Tesla screen that is Chinese, and it does this whole thing. But I've heard bad things about those too, and I think the software on those look just terrible. So anyway, those are also like almost $1,000, I think, like 800 or something like that. So that's not a route that I'm looking to go. Maybe down the line, who knows? But for now, I think that I can make Bluetooth work on this for like under $60. So just let's dive into it. So the parts you're going to need, if you have an auxiliary out input in here, you should be able to use that. I don't have one to reference, so you're just gonna have to be a little intuitive on that and take it apart and see if you can access the wires behind it. Auxiliary ports are pretty simple. They're essentially 3 wires. I think I might have brought one in. Well, I'll get to that at least. It's gonna look something like this, but only 2 wires, and then the shielding, I think. Don't quote me on that. We'll find out shortly. So this is a shield wire, this raw wire in here, that makes it so it kind of interrupts or protects the current from being interrupted by adjacent cables, because the flow of electricity creates a field, like magnetic field. So if you run audio cables or even like a backup camera cable adjacent to other kind of power wires, it can create interference. That's why you'll sometimes get static on aftermarket backup camera screens and stuff like that, or static through the music, is because it's getting interference from other magnetic fields. I'm not a scientist, so I could be missaying that. This is a USB cable that I already stripped back, so there's extra cables in here. I think this would normally be like positive, negative, and then these are data cables, so for transferring information. So anyway, I digress. I do not have an auxiliary input anywhere, so I'm mounting this one. This was on Amazon. I'll post all the links for the parts that I used in here, but based on which car you have, you may need different stuff, or you may need a lot less stuff if you already have like this auxiliary input. So this one comes with a little mounting thing, which it comes with some screws and stuff, but I'm just going to double side tape it and stick it down under here, somewhere kind of out of the way. So you're gonna need something to stick your auxiliary into with this thing. HVM LAC, whatever. This is one of those no-name Amazon brands. And made up name, I should say. And it gets pretty good reviews. Now, there was one with a lot better reviews, but I heard that every time you hop into the car and it connected to your Bluetooth, it would make like a noise. It would be like a Chinese voice talking to you saying it was connected, and I thought that would get really annoying. So I opted not to get that one. But what this essentially is it's a USB, or yeah, it's an auxiliary to Bluetooth adapter. So it has a USB in here. It actually also has a little microphone, so you can do USB calls. But you essentially plug this in, and all this is doing is getting power, is powering the unit, which it's all, I guess, in here. And then this plugs into your auxiliary. So we're putting power to here, so we can power this, and we're putting auxiliary, which is going to go to the back of this head unit, which we're going to wire, and that's what it's going to be. It's going to be the input to the system, to the speakers and everything. And so this guy just plugs in like a regular stick drive, I guess. And then you take that and plug it in the auxiliary, so like that, which obviously it's not hooked up right now. And in theory, every time you turn the car on, it should just auto pair and just go to your Bluetooth. Now, if you don't have a speaker, like I don't, supposedly there's a little speaker built into there, and you can see the hole for it. I don't know how well you're going to see it, but there's a little hole there. I'm not real optimistic about that, and it's not that important to me. But anyway, so I'm kind of tired of talking about this, so we're just going to tear into it, and I'll show you as we go exactly how I plan on wiring all this. Now, I also have to give a shout out to Bill. Bill has a blog at explorerpiu.wordpress.com. I'll put the link in the description. He does similar stuff that I do as far as making the Explorers, the Interceptors more like Explorers, and a bit better for everyday civilian use. And he has a post on how to do this. He didn't go as far as this, but he did the hard part. And so I'm going to link his blog. You should go check out his other stuff. But anyway, thanks to Bill, this is kind of where I got the inspiration for it. So we're going to go ahead and dive in. So first thing we're gonna do is we need to pop off these trim panels. So without scratching. All right. Get those out of the way. And I think it's a 7mm. We'll find out real quick. Yep. Disconnect it down here. We're just gonna set it down there. And then we need to take out, I believe it's this one. So remove the CD player. Let's take a look at our plug. Okay, so I think that's the plug we need. Let me just double check. Yeah, because there's only one plug going into that. All right, so this is what mine looks like. There's a whole extra plug that's not being used. It's a whole different size. So on here, there are, in the middle, there are plugs missing. And so this is where I reference Bill's page, that he tells you the pin out. And then what you got to do is you got to add pins going to a auxiliary cable. So I am actually going to do, just in case I mess it up, I don't want to mess up this guy. So I've had a stack of random AUX cables that I can, you know, they're pretty expendable. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut off an end of these, separate the sheathing, split the two wires inside, and we're going to put them on terminals, and we're going to plug them into here. And then this is going to run down. So let's pretend that's plugged in. This is going to run down. Let's see. That's wherever there they are. They're going to hook into these female to female adapters. They're just essentially auxiliary extensions. So I'm going to plug into that. And then since this is kind of my non-expendable cable, because I really don't want to mess this one up, I'm just going to plug it into there. That way, if I mess something up on the install, I don't have to worry about, you know, buying another one of these. So if it works out well for me, maybe just do what I do and forget this whole part and just cut it off here and splice it there. But this is kind of my insurance policy that I don't mess it up too bad. Okay, and then that'll mount, and that'll be pretty simple. So let's tackle the auxiliary first, and then we'll do USB separate. So what I first need to make sure, I'm going to just put this out of the way so I don't accidentally cut it. We need to figure out on these cables what size pins they are. So I've got a series of these de-pinning tools that I've had for quite some time. And I'm not exactly sure which one, if any of them, are the right ones. So I'm going to just mess around with them and see if I can get any of these to work. All right, my camera died. So I'm just going to get you caught up on what we've done here. So per Bill's instructions, I went and got some terminals from a plug, whatever I did with it here. So this plug was a spare one that was in the center console. I can't remember what it plugged into, but it was like something that I wouldn't need. I think it might have actually been part of the old sync system. I can't remember exactly. But anyway, so what I did is I took it and I figured those terminals, those pins, if I can get it to focus, was roughly the same size as these ones in here. So, and then what I did is there's these plastic covers that I took off, which I should put back on. So this plastic cover, it just pops off of this infotainment plug, the radio plug. So I took that off. And then in the middle here, per his pictures and diagrams, you're going to add these 3 wires. So you're going to add these. See these 2 white wires? I added these. Now it doesn't matter what color yours are as long as they're in the right pins. So the clip right here is facing towards you. So I added, so I skipped 2 blank spaces and I added 1, then 1 behind it, then 1 beside it to the right. So we're going to call these top right, top left, bottom left, or just bottom because there's only 1. So we added these 3 plugs, okay? And then we went over to our auxiliary cable. And now I did learn something about these auxiliary cables that is good to know. So I was going to use this one because it had the shielding, which should produce better sound quality. But I ended up realizing that it had 4 wires. And if you look at these prongs, you'll see it has 4 sections, right? With a little black dividing them. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I never realized this, but that means that's 4 wires. And I guess this one is particularly used, it has an extra wire for like microphone. And the wire seemed a little bit smaller, so I just didn't want to mess with this one. So I ended up using this one, and see it's got only 3 sections to it, which we're hooking up three wires, okay? So they're pretty standard in color. I've seen a little bit of variation in color. Sometimes this blue one is black. But pretty much you've got, I'm trying to remember what they are now. But this one, I believe, was the negative. I think this was the right, and this is the left. I might be mixing that up, but it's all in his diagram and in his description. He lets you know which is which. Now, in his write-up, Bill put, just ran wires straight to the infotainment because they're in his center console that he had installed because he had an auxiliary port. I don't have an auxiliary port, so I have to run this cable. Now, on a side note, I don't know if this would actually work hooking this up to USB. It might. That might have actually been what he did. I assumed he was using an AUX cable, but you could probably, because it's similar wires. If you look at, this is on a USB, I think if you get rid of this wire, those might be the same 3. Don't quote me on that. So if you don't want to add an aux and you just want to do USB, that might work, but I'm not 100% sure if that works or not. But this I know will work. So pretty much what I did is I joined these up, use his diagram, but pretty much, the white wire is the bottom, and then this red wire goes to the top right, and this blue wire, which is sometimes also a black wire, is the top left. Okay. So that's what we're left with. Now we're done with the aux. Other than I'm going to solder these together, which I'll do off screen. You're going to solder these together, and you might put a heat shrink on it, but you don't want these exposed in any way that they could touch metal or touch each other. You're going to get static. So I'm going to solder these off screen, and then we're left with this guy. And this guy is going to go into our extender expansion plug, whatever you want to call this. It's a female to female 3.5, I think it is, which is the standard size plug. And then this is going to go to our mounted aux port. Okay, so now what we got to do for the setup I'm going to run, which I think is a very clean setup, that'll work really well for a lot of you, is now we got to power USB. So the next bit's about power or wiring up your USB. But for now, we can solder all this up. We can put the radio back in, and we can even put everything back in the front cover and everything. Okay, so to save time, I already unbolted this stuff, but pretty much there's this cover that sits on top of the console. You pop that off. It's just held on with a couple clips, and then there's a 1 7mm screw right here, and then these pop out with these clips. Now, once again, this is only if you have the console. If you don't have the center console, pull this out of the way real quick. If you don't have the center console, you'll have a different panel going up and down like this. And so all you need to do is get behind that, which is, it comes off similarly, it just pops off, and I think there's 2 screws. So you're going to remove that. And if you have your, panel with the AUX and the USB, well, if you have the USB and the AUX, you probably have sync, so this wouldn't apply to you. But if you source that panel out and buy it, you can install it so you have a nice OEM finish, and then run these wires to it and wire it from the backside. But if you just have the blank panel like I did, you're going to want to drill out holes and mount your, wherever it went, you're going to want to mount your auxiliary and your USB to that, and then wire it up there. But since I'm doing it with that guy, and I don't have the actual auxiliary port, I'm going to mount the auxiliary port down here like I showed earlier, but we need to wire this guy up. So the way this works is, this is the wire going to the back of it. This plug, which is down in here, it's hard to see if I can get to it. It's right down there. It's that plug. That is the other end of where that goes. So that connects to the one down in there. That is this same size, but it is a female plug down there. So I happen to have this guy. This is just a standard mini smaller USB. And then, so it's just a regular cable. You found these a lot during like the early 2000s. They use these kind of first generation USB. So a lot of people just have these sitting around. So I'm just using one that I've had laying around. This is going to plug in down there. This I'm going to cut the end off of, and then we're going to wire it to an ignition. But we actually have to downstep it from the 12 volts that the car is putting off, or else you're going to fry your electronics, because USB should be 5 volt. So we have this step down that is going to convert it from 12 volts to 5 volts. So, so I've got my strippers here. We're going to cut this end off. We don't need this guy anymore. And then we're going to strip off a nice big length if I can with these strippers. I might need the other strippers. Yeah, I'm just going to use the side strippers. These ones are better for removing sheathing. There we go. Now it looks like this one is insulated because it's data transfer cable. So around this these aluminum or whatever this is, I just made a mess of them, so I'm gonna have little wire threads under my console now. Peel it back, peel back this little foil tape. If I can find where the end of it is. I'm not going to hook up, we're not doing data transfer. We don't need this insulated wire. So I'm just going to peel this back like that, and it's going to reveal these wires. Now, so positive, negative, and these are for data transfer, so we don't need those. So we can actually just snip those off if we wanted. So these are the only 2 wires that we actually need here. So I'm going to strip them. See if this works a little better. There we go. A little bit more. Okay. So these guys are going to attach to... All right. So we've got red and black in. Okay, so we're going to want 12 volts going in. So we're going to hook these up to my, this is going to go to an ignition wire. This is going to just be grounded. And then this is going to go to, this is going to go to red. So yellow to red and then black to black. And this will be, so 12 volts is going to come into here and it's going to convert it to 5 volts. So going to want to splice these together. Once again, this is our USB cable, and this I'm just going to splice in to my ignition, which in the prior video I established that these two wires in the video, I think where I did the I think I did the center console video and the steering wheel ignition or steering wheel AUX switches, established that these two switches that I've tapped off already are ignition. So I'm actually going to tap off those again. It'd probably be good if I had a ignition fuse box under here. That's probably going to be future. I'll add that because that's a little bit better than constantly tapping off of the same wire. But this is going to pull next to nothing, so I'm okay tapping it in. It's just not the preferred way of doing it. So I'm going to wire this all up down here. I'm going to probably get some double-sided tape and mount this somewhere down here where it's not going to interfere with the console. And then I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so what we've done here is this was one of the cigarette lighters that it plugs into here. So I just took the negative for this and tapped it on there. So that's a negative wire. So I'll be plugging that in. Something like that. Make sure it's fully seated on both sides. And then I put yet another tap in on this ignition wire, which this is going to get fixed and a little bit more properly installed with a fuse box instead of having all of these T-taps. But for now, and to make sure that it's going to work, this one got a little tweaked. It'll work for now. Okay, it's installed properly. Okay, so, and then on this side, I have soldered up, and I chopped back these wires we're not going to be needing, including the insulation wires. I have these soldered up. So, this plug that I'm sitting on, that's that USB, is going to go down here, and I gotta locate my USB, just right there. I can feel it. All right. This cable right here. So this guy is what is going into the back end of the console, which is where my USB port is. So we're gonna take our adapted power input. So this is now 5-volt power instead of 12-volt. And we are going to line it up. And it is now plugged in. And now I'm going to kind of manage these wires a little bit because it's a bit of a rat's nest. Probably get some double-sided tape and put this on the side or whatever. I'm going to tuck these wires in. And then I am going to make sure to plug my cigarette lighter back in and then put the console in. Probably right now would be an easier time to route my AUX extension, this right here. So this is the auxiliary cord that is now wired for the back of the radio, and I am just going to put the connectors, the female connectors in. Then I drop it. So that plugs in there. Nice and snug. And then my extension one, I plug in like that. So once again, the only reason I did this was in case I messed up while soldering or cut the wire. I don't know what could go wrong. I didn't want to mess up. You know, these are cheap cables that I had a whole stack of that just aux to aux. These ones that's aux to the, so it's male to female. I didn't want to mess this one up. So that's why I did that. Like I said, you could probably just go straight from here to the back of the radio and eliminate this and this, but this is how I did it. The inside of here, clean this out a little bit, is where I'm going to mount it. And so I'm going to take my mounting plate I got to figure out where to mount it. There's a lot of different options, but I think the best thing would be to mount it up. Can't see it very well, but up underneath this spot right here, because this isn't really very usable space. But I have to have it come in somewhere. So I think I'm going to drill a hole. I'm going to drill a hole right here. So I'm going to go get my drill real quick. And I got to make sure that it's a big enough hole to feed my aux cable through. Okay, so it looks like I managed to not bring with me my bigger drill bits, so I'm going to use a smaller one and just drill multiple holes, which is not how I prefer to do it, but today's the day I have to work on this. So it's going to that'll do. So get plastic bits all over. See if that's going to fit. And it barely fits. Okay. So there's my very fancy drilled hole on the back of this. And so I'm going to take this guy and feed it through here. So I need to take this off. And so this one just pops in the little mounting grooves. Turn a little bit. Like that. That's our mounting plate. Now I don't want to drill, well, not so much I guess that I don't really want to drill holes, but if I can, I'd prefer not to. Just more like a lazy thing. Also, I'm looking and I don't see where they even sent me screws. I think they probably did, but I don't know where they're at. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put double-sided tape, and if that fails, which this is pretty strong stuff, if it fails, then I'll put screws in it. But I've had really good luck with this very high bond 3M double-sided tape. And if I just do 2 or 3 layers. I think this is going to hold. Okay, put that back on. So that's what I'm left with, is in theory everything's wired up, it just needs to be reassembled. So now the last thing we're going to be doing, and I'll just talk while I'm putting this back together, is you need to go on to Forescan. This isn't going to work unless you have Forescan. And you know, if you're going to have any Ford vehicles, you know, 2000s and newer, you're going to want to have Forescan anyway. So if you don't have it yet, you know, this alone is a good reason to get it. I know some guys can just get the free trial and just renew their license whenever they need it. I just go ahead and pay for it because I've got like 5 Ford vehicles, including this one. So, all right, quick update. You'll notice a lot looks different in here now. So mid-video, I decided that this rat's nest of wires I had going on wasn't going to cut it. And so I simplified it and made it a lot cleaner. So I added this fuse box. I have an independent video on this, or a designated video for all this. So go check that out. That will explain how I did all this. But point is, I'm using a relay and this 36 amp wire to, or 34 amp wire to power all my auxiliary stuff. And then I got a fuse box in here with the indicator lights to let me know when a fuse burns out. But yeah, so now I've got right here is my USB. So this, I put my regulator down here. This is the regulator, obviously, that turns 12 volts from the car. It goes so right here, it's going from 12 volts in the car, going into the regulator, and then it's coming out as 5 volts. And then that wire goes, I routed along here, and pretty much it comes into this USB, this mini USB. And we plug that into there, and then it comes out here, which will plug into the center console, and that will be used to power our Bluetooth adapter. Okay, so there's that, and then we've of course got our auxiliary. This is all going to be tucked up in these holes, because if you have too many wires and stuff going on here, which is why I decided to do all this, you're going to have a bear of a time trying to get that console in here, and you're going to have wires all over the place. So try to minimize as many wires as you can in the front here, and that's why I've kind of kept them back here. And as a bonus, whenever if I want to look at my fuses, if I think one's blown, or if I, you know, smell something funny, I'll know it's all right here, because, you know, this voltage regulator, I'm not really worried about it, but anytime you're changing one voltage to another, there's, you know, a high chance of heat or something going wrong. So I wanted this somewhere that I could look and feel at it if I need to. And so this is where my pocket's going to be, and I can just pop that off and look at it if I need to. So quick access without having to take anything apart. So let me put everything back together, and then we will test out the Bluetooth. Okay, so we're all buttoned up here, everything put together. That there is what it looks like with my auxiliary and my USB all hooked up. Now, I mentioned you got to get Forescan. What you got to do is enter, I've already done it, but just follow Bill's instructions. I'm going to link it in the description. He outlines it really clearly on how to use Forescan to activate this. And after you've activated it, you'll see once you hit AUX, it'll go to that it's active. Now, I'll link this guy. This is the USB, its sole function is for power, and then this goes in obviously to the aux port. So pretty much you'll plug both of these in, down here, and just like that. It's kind of hard to see, but so they're both hooked in, and then when you turn on the car, it'll just make a beep. Well, so first you're going to pair your phone to it, and then after that you hop in your car and it'll just automatically connect whenever it's... Okay, so with the key on, I just unplugged it because I want to show you what it does. You plug it on and you hear a little music. Tell what it lights up blue. Okay, now it's trying to pair. So it's this HVM LAC U6. Okay, you hear the beep. Now it's connected. So that's it. I can literally just close this, and every time I get in the car, it'll auto pair. So now I got music, and the sound quality is good. I would not say it's amazing, but it's not bad by any means. It actually is pretty good, honestly. So now when you turn it off, so we turn off the car, open the key or open the door, so to kind of reset the system, and we'll turn the key back on and just wait. I don't know if you heard it. It was fat. Okay, yeah, it's already connected again. Now, the one thing I've noticed is that even though it auto connects like instantly, so far, at least on my Apple products, you have to go in and hit play every single time on your device, which isn't ideal. I would prefer if it just started playing where I left off, but you know, it's not that big of a deal. It'd be worse if I had to like go into my Bluetooth settings and connect it. It connects really fast. So just to show you again, I'll be quiet this time. Let's turn up the volume a little bit. It's a key on. And that's it. Every single time it's that fast. So, and then I just got to come in and hit play. Now, maybe I have my settings in my device or in Spotify where it just doesn't auto start playing. I haven't looked into it. Maybe your Android will be different. But point is, the reason I didn't go with the other one that had even more reviews on Amazon is because apparently every time you would turn it on, in like a really thick Chinese robot accent, it would say like Bluetooth connected, and it was just really, I don't know, a lot of people kind of complained about it, and I really didn't want that. Maybe there's autoplays, I don't know. So I guess kind of choose which one you like best, which one you'd rather have. But the only thing that I don't really utilize with this is phone calls. If a phone call comes in, I pick up my phone and it'll auto want to talk through, you know, this system, but I'll just change it on my phone when I start talking. You'd have to have this open for able to hear the microphone, and I'm very skeptical that it would sound very good, but I haven't really tried it either. So, but you know what? The alternatives for having Bluetooth on a vehicle that came without sync is to change the entire system and either go OEM, which I heard is a real pain and very expensive, or to go aftermarket, which because of the controls here, you have to get special fitting kits, and they relocate with like aftermarket temperature control touchscreen, like by Metra, and it's really clunky looking. I think it looks pretty crappy. So, or you can get the one big Tesla style screen, which they're all made in China, designed by the Chinese, and the user interface is terrible. I haven't seen them personally, but I've watched videos on them, and I see a lot of people on the forums or on the Facebook groups posting up to sell theirs because they just ended up not liking it, and you pay like $1,000 for it. So for under $100, like I think it was like under $60, I was able to hook up this entire system, all the components that I showed you. I'll link all of them in the description. And so I would just highly recommend it. It's not a perfect system, but it's eons better than what it was. So hopefully this helps somebody. Make sure to go to the forum, to the blog. that I'll link below. He did a great job of outlining how to do all this, and I don't want to steal his thunder, so I'll just send the link, and I'm not going to, you know, repeat a lot of the information that he relayed, but definitely go give him a follow and favorite his page, but maybe drop him a thanks. Really nice guy. He responded to me when I was asking him some questions almost instantly. So hopefully this helps y'all, and we'll see you in the next video.